We are into the month of August. We are into our last trait of success. So we've now been doing this for 1 year. Maybe you've liked it, maybe you haven't. But we are going to be wrapping up this entire series this month, so we'll end it here in August. And our last trait of success that we're going to be looking at is honesty and follow-through, and learning about those things in our lives. If you didn't get one of these this morning, you should have. If you didn't get it on your way out, it's out on the information table. It is just one of the devotional cards that just tells you what the trait is. It talks about what it looks like, which is telling the truth in all situations, which in turn removes the stress of hiding secrets and living lies. So we're going to be looking at that during the month of August this year. On the back side, you have several scriptures to help you meditate on. So what we encourage you to do is use these scriptures throughout the month in your devotion time. Maybe read one a day, or read the list a day, or whatever. Read it with your kids. Whatever you want to do. Is this a devotional help or devotional tool so that you're thinking about this during the week, not just when you're here on Sunday mornings, so that God can work in your life and he can keep these scriptures and these words in your mind on a daily basis rather than just a weekly basis. All right? So that is there for your use. Today, what we're going to be doing is this. We're going to start by looking at a very hard truth to accept in our lives, and it is simply this, that it's our actions, not our words, that actually reveal our heart about what we care about. We're going to look at a passage written by James, who writes the book of James, who's actually the brother of Jesus Christ. So this is Jesus' brother that writes this book, and we're going to look at this, and the way I would describe his book is it's hard truth. The way James writes his book is he's kind of in your face. He deals with issues that are hard for us to deal with because he deals with issues where we kind of deceive ourselves oftentimes in our lives. And anytime that someone brings to the surface things that we deceive ourselves about, it's kind of uncomfortable for us to deal with. But yet the book of James does this over and over and over again. And I want you to understand this. The reason James speaks the way he does is not to upset us. The reason he's so blunt is not to tick us off. The reason he is the way he is and the way he writes is to try to help wake us up from our apathy and to motivate us to a life of action and genuine love. That's why he does it, is he goes, I'm writing to a group of people who seem to have become apathetic about their walk with Jesus Christ, so I got to kind of get in their face, and I'm going to be bold, I'm going to be blunt, and I'm going to make them face questions they don't like asking a lot of times, and really mold them around, grind them around, and figure out what the answer really is in their life in areas that they tend to deceive themselves. So that's what we're going to be looking at this morning. Now, we live in a society and in an age where symbolism and platitudes seem to define a person's heart rather than what their actions say about them. But the reality of life is this, that symbolism and platitudes are meaningless unless they are backed up by action in your life. Without action, all symbolism and platitudes are is deception and lies that you present to a world. What I mean by that is this. Without action, your words, your platitudes, your little catchphrases you say, the little symbolism things you have, without action to back those things up that you say you believe, all they are is you're trying to present a false self to the world around you to tell people you care about things you really don't. For example, let me give you some worldly examples of this. The singer Sting. How many of you have heard of him and are aware of who he is? Okay, Sting is praised as a huge environmentalist. He talks about all the time how he is committed to reducing his carbon footprint on this earth. So, huge environmentalist. I want to shrink my carbon footprint on this earth. But if you know about him, what he has is he has his own private jet that he exclusively travels around the country and the world in on a regular basis. So my question to you is this. Is Sting really concerned about his carbon footprint? Is he? No, he's not. His actions tell you he's not really concerned about it, although symbolism and his little catchphrases and what he says about himself says he deeply cares about it. But his actions say something different. Paris Hilton. How many of you know Paris Hilton? She was like the Kardashians before the Kardashians, all right? So you have Paris Hilton. In 2008, she was praised for being the face of Vote or Die campaign. Maybe you remember this. It was the Vote or Die campaign. It was all about getting people signed up to vote in that election. And she was kind of one of the face people that she had, and she did commercials and things like that, make awareness. Until later on in 2009, someone asked her who she voted for, and she finally admitted she didn't actually vote in 2008. So let me ask you, does Paris Hilton really care about voting in presidential elections? No, she doesn't. She says she does. Her words say so, but her actions say something totally different. Jimmy Kimmel, how many of you know this guy? He's one of the late night comedians, okay? Jimmy Kimmel right now, he is held up as an example of a male feminist, meaning he has a desire to uplift the image of women, okay? That is Jimmy Kimmel. If you know Jimmy Kimmel, though, for 5 years he did a show called The Man Show. And I would not encourage you to watch The Man Show, but The Man Show is every little degrading thing you could ever think of to degrade women with. That's what his show was for 5 years, 5 nights a week, 52 weeks a year, and he ran that thing for 5 years. But now he's praised as this icon who wants to improve the image of women. Now, how many of you would say Jimmy actually cares about the image of women and uplifting them in society? No, okay? His symbolism, his words say one thing, but his actions say something totally different about what he cares about. Let me give you the last one, and you're going to recognize this guy, Harvey Weinstein. Okay, Harvey Weinstein. Just recently, he was praised as a man who empowered women. He was even at the Women's March. Now we know what we know about Harvey Weinstein. So does Harvey Weinstein really care about the empowerment of women? No, he doesn't. He says it. He uses symbolism to say he is. He goes to things that shows he is. But we know behind the scenes in his actions, that's all lie. That is deception that he puts out to the world. You see, in James's day and age, symbolism and platitudes were also used to define people's hearts rather than the actions that they were living in their personal lives. And it's this attitude that carried over into the church as well. So the early church of Rome at the time was carrying over these same issues that they had in society over into their faith as well. So what was happening was this: some believed that having the right symbolism, saying the right things, made them faithful followers of Jesus Christ. And in chapter 2 of this letter of James, what happens is James makes it very clear that it's your actions, not your words, that reveal your heart. And so James is going to make that very noticeable for us, make that very real to us this morning. And we're going to be looking at verses 14 through 26 of the second chapter of this letter that James wrote. So here's how it goes, and we're going to look through it here. It says this. He starts off, he says, "What good is it, dear brothers and sisters?" Now, real quick, when he says dear brothers and sisters, he's referring to fellow believers. He's not just referring to anybody in the world or whatever. He's saying to you, each other in the church, brothers and sisters in Christ. He says, "What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith," which means you are a follower of Christ, so you say you're a follower of Christ, "but don't show it by your actions. Can that kind of faith save anyone?" So what James is saying is this: yes or no, if you say you are a follower of Christ, but you have no actions that actually show you are, can that type of faith save anyone? Is there any value in that faith? And he's asking the people yes or no. And what we're going to find here is he's going to answer that question for them. As he's going to go, I'm going to tell you what the answer is, so let me run you through some things so you think about this question. Can that faith actually save anyone? Where it's just symbolism, it's words, it's a name that you wear in your life, but you have no actions that go with it. Here's what he says. He says, suppose you see a brother or sister, so again a fellow believer, who has no food or clothing, and you say, so let me give you a little background. You're in dialogue with someone, so obviously they're having a conversation, a brother or sister in Christ, and so you see they have no food or clothing, and you say after your conversation, goodbye, have a good day, stay warm and eat well, but then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What does that do? Okay, what good does that do? So he brings this up, he says, is there any good in that conversation you had? Is there any value to that person and your good wishes that you gave that person? What would be your answer? Is there any value in that? Okay? So let's say I have DeMarcus, and I'm pointing you out today, DeMarcus, you get to be in my message, okay? So I have DeMarcus, and I'm driving home to church today, and DeMarcus tells me, and he gets in my car, and he has underwear on, and he has no other clothes on, and he hasn't ate in 4 days, and he tells me how it is, and I bring him to church, and I take him back home. I go, hey, DeMarcus, have a good week, man. I hope you get some clothes, and I hope you get some food. Have a great week, man. I love you. And I drop him off at home, and I drive back to my home. Exactly. And that's what James is saying, which is I don't really care about DeMarcus. I didn't really care about anything in that conversation. It was just a conversation I was just having to be nice to him. but I didn't have any action to it. I didn't meet those needs. And so my conversation with him of telling him, hey, have a good week and hope everything goes well for you, did nothing of value to him. They were simply words. And that's what James is bringing up. So he goes on, he says this. So you see, faith, and the way I would describe faith here is words of your internal beliefs. So faith meaning inside, I would say, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe in God. So he says here, you see faith, these words that you have inside of you, of your internal beliefs, by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and it is useless. So James is saying that symbolism and platitudes don't save anybody. It doesn't help anyone, and it is literally useless and as good as dead if all your faith is things you have inside you. You go, I believe in God and I believe in Jesus. But it doesn't translate into any type of actions in your life. He just goes, that's worthless. It helps no one. It's as good as dead. It's just like death. It doesn't do you any service. Then he goes on to say this. He says, now some will argue, some people have faith, others have good deeds. Now this is interesting. Obviously, James has been having this conversation with multiple people. So in this conversation with multiple people about the same issue, here's one of their retorts back, one of the things they use to defend themselves when James is basically telling them, what you're doing is worthless and it has no value. They come back and they say, well, James, here's the thing. Some people have faith like me. Some people have good deeds like you. Okay, that explains this. We're just different people. I have faith, you have deeds. That's just kind of how it works out. Now, this is something obviously he's dealt with, and he tells them, guys, that's not how it works. Now he's going to go through and he's going to describe and help them logically understand why that has no value, why that doesn't work. He goes on and he says this, but I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. So what James replies with is this thought process that you have, that you can just have faith, but it doesn't translate into any type of meaningful action in your life. I want you to know the way I show the world I'm a follower of Christ is they can see it in my actions. The things I do, they can look at it and go, that's different than how the world lives. That's a different lifestyle. That's different reactions. That's different how they treat people. You have different actions in the world, so I can tell there's something different about you. And he's going, that's how I show it to the world. You with having just these thought processes in your life and these words that you say don't demonstrate anything different to the world around you. Basically, you just have meaningless words that you spout off, and they're empty and they're valueless. There's no value in your words. There's no value in the things you say you believe. All right? He says this. This is obviously their retort. This is their response when James tells them that. They don't like hearing it. So they respond back this way. You say you have faith and that you believe that there's is one God. What their response is when James still says, I show up on my works. I have faith too, but I show my works out. That's how the world knows it. They say, but James, we believe just like you. We believe there's one God. The way we would say it in our day and language this way, we believe in one God. We believe that Jesus Christ is the Son. So James, I believe the exact same things you believe. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. So I'm just like you. Now here's James's response. And this is one of those where he torches them. Okay? Here's what he says, and this is very blunt. He says, good for you. Even the demons believe this, and they tremble in terror. How foolish. Can't you see that faith without good deeds is useless? So what James does here is he goes, this thing that you find value in, which is you say, I believe in God and I believe in Jesus, so that means I'm a follower of Christ. I believe the same things you believe, James. James says, you know what, guys? Demons believe the same things. Big whoop-de-doo-dah. Hey, let's throw a party for you. You believe there's one God and you believe Jesus is the Son. You know what? The demons, who are the enemies of God, know there's one God and they know Jesus is his Son. Yip-de-doo-dah. They believe the same thing. Great for you. You're in the same ballpark as the demons. That's going to serve you well. He is very blunt with them. What he makes clear is this. The difference between James's belief and their belief and the demons' belief is demons, even knowing those things, having that knowledge, it doesn't change their behavior. It doesn't change their actions. They still oppose God in every way. And James is going, but the comparison, he doesn't say it in words, but what he's making the point is, I believe those things and it changes my actions. That's what makes me different than the demons. That's why you really aren't much different than them, because it doesn't change any of your actions. You say the same thing I say, but my beliefs and my actions work together and they change. Yours do not. You still live opposed to the ways God calls you to live. Okay? As I said, James is very blunt. All right? He goes on to say this. He says, don't you remember that your ancestor Abraham was shown to be right with God by his actions when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see, his faith and his actions work together. His actions made his faith complete. Let me stop for a second if you don't know this story. Abraham, who is the father, this is the figurehead of the entire Jewish nation, and the Jews link back to their founding father, kind of, okay? He brings up the illustration of this foundation pillar of faith, Abraham, and says, you remember what he did. God called him to take his one and only son, take him up and sacrifice him. And he was going to follow through on that until God stopped him. And then God looked at that and went, you've shown yourself faithful. You've put your faith into actions, that you trust me and you will trust me at any point. Now we know from the book of Hebrews that Abraham's thought process was, God promised me this son, and I'm going to do what he tells me to do because I know that God can even bring someone back from the dead. So I'm going to be faithful because God's telling me to do it. But he also promised me this is going to be my son. So God will figure it out somewhere along the line. So Abraham was going through, and then God stops him and says, you've shown yourself faithful because now you've taken your belief and you've shown it out in action. He says, and so it happened, just as the scripture says, Abraham believed God, and God counted him as righteous because of his faith. He was even called the friend of God. So what we see here is this, and what James is really trying to get at is this. Biblical faith, God-honoring faith, Jesus-inspired faith is not just a belief system. It can't just be a belief system that's just some internal thing inside you. It has to be more. He says this, he says, so you see, we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. Let me read that again. So you see, we are shown to be right with God by what we do, not by faith alone. You see, faith has to be both a noun and a verb at the same time. It's a very unique word in the Bible, which is it's both a noun and it's both a verb, an action at the same time. It's a foundational truth and it's an action that happens in your life. It's a belief that has to result in action. All right? Having faith in God, if you say you have faith in God, to say that and to mean it, it has to result in action. There's no other way around it. It has to be a verb and a noun at the same time. Now, this next part is very interesting. He gives example 2 of this playing out, and he says this, Rahab the prostitute is another example. He goes from Abraham, the most respected man of the Jews, to a prostitute. That's his 2 examples he gives. He says Rahab the prostitute is another example. She was shown to be right with God by her actions when she hid those messengers and sent them safely away by a different road. Let me give you her story real quick. Her story comes from the book of Joshua, which is they go in to conquer the promised land, and before they go into a city called Jericho that has these huge fortified walls, they send some spies to try to figure out what's going on in the city and see what the defenses are. These spies get into the city, they kind of get trapped in there, and they go to this woman named Rahab, and they say, basically, we are servants of the Most High God. We need protection. She feels convicted that she's supposed to do that, and she hides them in her house, and then she lets them out her window that sits on the wall so they can escape the city and run away. So she is faithful to God when God calls her to respond to him and to protect these men, and she shows her faithfulness to God. She puts her faith in actions. That's what he's referencing here is this woman Rahab. Now, I think the reason he chooses Rahab, because again, it's very odd that he takes Abraham and Rahab. Okay, it'd be like taking Mother Teresa and Hitler and going, let me tell you about Mother Teresa. Oh my goodness, she's incredible. Now let me show you another example of Hitler. What are you talking about, Hitler? Okay, that's what it was to these people. You just went from Abraham to the prostitute Rahab, who wasn't even a Jew. Okay, you went to the lowest of the low. The reason I think he did this is he wanted to make sure people couldn't use this teaching to be a bunch of legalists. They'll run around and say, I get to judge all of your actions, and your actions don't judge up to my standard, so you're not really a faithful follower of God. And you see this in church, right? Is you see people that go, well, these are the actions you're supposed to have, and if you're not to that bar, you're not really a Christian. All right? And so James, I think, understood his teaching here could be used that way, with faith and action having to be worked together, they're hand in hand, that some people become legalists and go, well, I got to set the bar of what the right actions are, and you need to meet my standard, or you're not really a follower of God, you're not really a Christian either. So he's throwing Rahab in here to go, you can't be a legalist, because here's what we know about her. Even though she was a prostitute, she displayed authentic faith through her actions based in her faith. Okay? Though she was a prostitute, she is rewarded and she is praised here as a faithful follower of God's. In the world's eyes, Rahab was strictly a prostitute at that point in her life. But from that point of faith, where she puts her faith into action, everything changes going forward, and she was shown to be a follower of God at that point, even though the world still saw her as a prostitute. And nothing better as a prostitute. God saw her as a follower of his, as a faithful follower of his. Then James wraps it up, and he just says this in the last line. He says, just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. Okay? Just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. So in a society that defines a person's heart based on symbolism and platitudes, does your faith look different? Does your faith look different than the world around you? Is your faith more than just some stated belief that you say you believe on the inside? Is your faith more than just some cross that you wear around your neck or some scriptures that you have hanging up in your house? Is your faith more than just some claim that you make about being a Christian? And if someone asks you if you're a Christian, you say, yep, I'm a Christian. Is it more than that? Is your faith more than just some church that you attend from time to time? Is your faith more? Is your faith currently being displayed as both a noun and a verb at this time in your life? Are you a follower of Christ, and does that lead to change in your actions and in your behaviors? Is your faith genuine, or is it just a deception that you are displaying to the world around you? As I said, these are very tough questions that James forces us to consider in our lives. But I want you to understand this. Tough questions sometimes have great outcomes, and they can lead to great life change. So this morning, as we live in a world of symbolism and platitudes, where people say one thing, but then their actions show something different, what I want to call us to this month of August is this. We have to be different. We have to make sure that our faith is not just some inward thing that we say we have, and some name that we wear in our life, and some symbols that we wear. We should be able to take all those things away, and people should still be able to look at us and go, they're different. Will we all look the same? Absolutely not. Are we all at different places in our spiritual development? Absolutely. Will one person's bar of where they are right now look different than another person's bar where they are right now? Absolutely. Does that mean this person's more of a follower of Christ than this person? Absolutely not. What matters is this. Do you have faith in Jesus Christ? And what that means is this. Do you believe he is the Son of God? And through that belief, does it force you to have different actions and behaviors in your life? If the answer to that question is yes, then you're on the right road. You're where you should be going. Okay, God will develop you over time, and he'll keep developing you from thing to thing to thing. But if the answer is no, you really need to rethink what's going on in your life. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father,